I'm Jared Craig, Veterans for America First Vet Voice podcast, and I have the pleasure of speaking with Valerie Dirksen, who's the president of the Children's Rights Advocacy Society, and who's an associate broker for the ESP, which is the fastest growing real estate brokerage company in the world. And she has a first hands-on experience dealing with human trafficking, specifically in Haiti, but she's here today to share with us, maybe those of us who are unaware as to the scope of human trafficking, the effects on our society, and how to combat that worldwide. So Valerie, thank you for coming onto the show today, and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, thank you, first of all, for having me, and thank you for your interest in the children. You know, they don't ask for any of this. I'm originally from upstate New York, two wonderful parents that have recently passed away. And I became aware of this tragedy, let's call it a tragedy, in 2011. In 2010, after the earthquake in Haiti, I was invited through my church here in Suwanee, Georgia, to help sponsor a dance troupe that was coming to town. And when I heard the orphan and earthquake put together, I thought, wow, these people have suffered a lot of trauma, and I'm only too happy to help. Since that time, in 2011, I became aware of what was actually happening in those orphanages. So a lot of people like myself think that they're helping orphans and abandoned children in orphanages throughout the world. It's not only Haiti and the Dominican Republic, the Philippines as well, Thailand, Vietnam. This is a huge problem worldwide. Poverty draws out a lot of these abandoned children. And I think that a lot of people are not aware of what's happening in these orphanages. So in other words, I feel like people are sending money there. They're doing missionary trips. They're doing fundraisers, T-shirts, walks, what have you. And they don't really understand because it's so far away and it's not in their backyard, they think, but really it is. But they think it's not in their backyard. And this fundraising and their efforts are really, they're not going to what they think or believe it's going towards. It's really uncovered a lot. It's a lot of let's say similar stories to what Jeffrey Epstein was doing on Epstein Island. It's happening in more than just Epstein Island.
And do you believe that the American market is fueling that industry?
Yes, I do. I think that Americans, and let's say North Americans, they're kind of naive to the plight of this trafficking. They don't think it's happening when in fact it's happened right here in Suwanee, Georgia, believe it or not. It's hard to believe, but it has. And Atlanta's one of the biggest, if not the biggest city in the United States for trafficking. Because of our international airport, this has driven a large amount of traffickers to come here and made it very attractive and convenient for them. So they're traveling, this is a destination city. Another thing is anytime there's a big, sporting event or a big convention or things like that, this is where the traffickers come out. And rough estimates put it at a $32 million annual industry. Because the commodity, the person that's being trafficked could be trafficked multiple times a day. And so there's a large amount of money. Fear comes into play, organized crime comes into play. And it's very, very tragic what we're seeing. But you can imagine if you take that tragedy, you take it a step further and you find an orphan or abandoned children. I had one victim in Haiti tell me that they had been in an orphanage since they were age 4. They had no recollection of their mother. And these missionaries that came down to stay at the house, they must have felt comfortable and let their guard down. And they shared with them what was actually happening in that house. And, only to have someone put their arm on their shoulder and say, hey, look, be grateful that you have shoes on your feet, food in your stomach, and you get to go to school. This is Haiti. And, never to return and so forth. So it's a dirty secret. I understand there's a lot of trauma that is caused by this. And I think that this is actually has led to and is leading further to a mental health crisis, both nationally and internationally. Certainly in Haiti, you have a lot of trauma victims that are trying to function. You can imagine the level of trauma and then trying to go get a job. Of course, in Haiti, I think the unemployment rate's 80%. So 8 out of 10 people don't have a job. So you can imagine if you're suffering from trauma like this, how are you going to go on a job interview? Put yourself together. There's no money. Doctors in Haiti make $300 a month. So it's more expensive to live a quality of life than it is in New York City. So through the years, so 2011, May of 2011, I became aware of what was happening in these orphanages. And it just, like I said, I went through all the stages of grief, right? First, I didn't believe it, right? Because how could I be supporting something through my church? I was introduced through my church. So our pastor was involved. So I became aware of what was happening. And I went through the stages of grief, right? I didn't believe it at first. How could I be supporting something as diabolical, I guess you could say, as this, and especially having been introduced through my church? There were a lot of people in my church that are just naive, wool over the eyes, whatever we want to say. We want to think the best. I'm an optimist. I want to think the best in things. I want to think this money is going towards a good cause. And so I did my research, and I found that on the internet, there was a lot out there on what's happening at these orphanages in Haiti. How could I have been so naive? And then I discovered that I'm not the only one that's naive. There's a lot of people out there that are naive as to what's happening, in these orphanages in Haiti and the Dominican Republic, for that matter. So the sad thing is the reaction of the churches. So a lot of the churches are involved in this sort of business cover up, however we want to put it. And, they, I think everybody's well intended at first, but then when they find out what's happening, for example, I gave the example of the lady that one of the victims at one of the houses told, and he said, after he told 12 people, he said, I'm never talking about it ever again, which is a sort of grooming and programming that, the Monarch program and so forth. This is well-established psychological programming. And, at some point the victim says, well, why bother even saying anything, right? No one's going to believe me, right? They're the big
the
pastor, priest, whatever. Correct. And meanwhile, back at the ranch, all these people are Tory reporters. So no one wants to talk about this, right? It's a very dirty secret. And as I said, I went through all the stages of grief. How could I be so ignorant to not see this? Why didn't I do any background checks on it? Well, they're really good. They pull you in through the church, and you trust your church, and it's your pastor, and he's a doctor, this, that, and the other thing, right? So why question it? How I couldn't in my wildest, I don't watch scary movies, right? But it's kind of like the Emperor's New Clothing. It's happening. And then they say, hey, the emperor has beautiful clothes on. And then you don't want to say the emperor's in his underwear, right? You don't want to be the one person that steps forward and be the spoiler, right? You don't want to be that person.
Well, Valerie,
and so,
in your experience,
it's sort of like
go ahead. I was going to ask, in your experience, when the different church leaders or the organizations that have good intentions find out about the true channeling of money or resources, that they continue to provide money to these organizations that have been shown to perpetuate human trafficking?
So I discovered through all this that the orphanage, let's call it the orphanage business in Haiti, is conservative estimates at $3.27 billion annual business. And I'm going to call it a business. You have most orphanages run also as a guest house. So imagine you have an orphanage, you're Joe Smith, who runs an orphanage in nondescript city in Haiti, right? And you 3-4 times a year, you have groups of mission trips that stay there from a week to 10 days. might have 20 children with 3 or 4 or 5 chaperones, right? They might stay at the house. Well, each night that they stay at the house, it's $50 to $75. Okay. And the house is already paid for by a fundraiser here in, let's say, North Carolina or Georgia or Arizona or Iowa. Okay. And so they're getting the overhead paid, plus they're getting that. And when these mission trips come down, they always say, what? Hey, what can we bring? Our congregation wants to send deodorant or books or sneakers or backpacks or what have you. And a congregation, like some of these orphanages only have 15 to 20 young men in them. Okay. And so your congregation collects 50 backpacks. So what happens? The backpacks end up at the market to be sold. So little old lady who ran out to Walgreens to get the backpack to bring on Sunday for the donation, did she know that it was going to the market to sell? Wouldn't it be easier just to give her the money? You know, it's a bad circle. It's a vicious cycle. And unfortunately, my experience through the years is that everybody knows about it, and it's the dirty little secret no one wants to talk about. Now, are you familiar with the group called NAMBLA?
Unfortunately, I know who they are.
NAMBLA is North American Man-Boy Love Association, and it is an advocacy group that wants to lower the age of consent. So in other words, it's perfectly fine to have an 8-year-old boy hook up with a 40-year-old man because it's love. In that, therein lies a lot of what we're seeing currently. So along with that advocacy comes things like they don't like the P word, pedophile. So pedophile now should be referred to as a MAP, a minor attracted person. So despite all that, what would you say, as I described the orphanages and the orphanage business and, you know, having these guests that, by the way, have never been vetted, there's no security check. If you were a pedophile or a predator, isn't that where you would go? Right? Because there's no check. You're going there.
Definitely a soft target.
Yeah. So imagine having NAMBLA stay at an orphanage. I mean, is that any red flags for you? Because the red flags are going off for me.
Oh yeah, totally.
And so when the leader, right, too many. So when the leader of NAMBLA died years ago, in lieu of flowers, he had donations sent to an orphanage in Haiti that has a rainbow on it and butterflies.
Right.
So, you know, this exactly, because you just can't make this up. And so, you know, the sad thing is we're talking about children who are our future. I mean, if we have damaged and traumatized our children to this level, this is more of the mental health crisis that I was talking about. We are in trouble, and I'm concerned. And let me tell you another thing why I'm concerned. I'm concerned because I talk to people. I talk to people in the diaspora, the Haitian diaspora. Again, they put their hand on my shoulder. Hey, thank you, Valerie, for what you're doing. I wasn't looking for a thank you. And I tell them all, you should be yelling louder and advocating more than I am. I found that, you know, it's one of those topics we just don't want to talk about, but rather than have it go away, it's actually been emboldened and it's grown. And so certainly since we've opened our border, we're seeing more trafficking going on in the United States, because that's the #1 consumer for trafficking is the United States. And prior to that, that's why Epstein Island and Tortuga Island and some of these islands, it's only too easy. It's 2 to 3 hours away. You can go down there and tell everybody, all your family, you're going on a mission trip, throw on one of those, you know, missionary trip colorful shirts, come back, you got all your photos. They're like, man, what a guy, what a gal, you know, gives their volunteers their free time to help the poorest of the poor. As I said, the churches are all involved. It doesn't matter what denomination. some more than others. Certainly the Catholic Church has been known to send their defrocked priests down there. Defrocked priest, I don't know if you're aware of what that is, but it's someone who's been asked to leave the clergy because of inappropriate behavior. Let's just leave it right there. And so they're hanging out down there where there's no police, there's no government, there's no functioning government. You have a 0% prosecution rate. And you have the largest group of NGOs that just collectively hang out at the Marriott and are life is good, because they get a nice expense account to say that they did all this great stuff. But the machine is poverty. Poverty's running all this. The UN's involved, and we're talking not small amounts of money. We're talking large amounts of money.
So would Haiti be a sanctuary? Is that what it seems like, a sanctuary for the harming of children in orphanages? And from my experience dealing with third world countries or developing nations, the children in the orphanages are orphans due to a lot of natural disasters. They're already living a life post-trauma. And these kids are in an orphanage because their parents either dumped them off or were killed in earthquakes or hurricanes or whatever might have been the case. And what other countries are we looking at that might also have sanctuary style policies?
Well, Haiti and the Dominican Republic is pretty good. Dominican Republic has tried. Haiti is pretty much the male side of this, and Dominican Republic is the female side. So some of my victims that I advocate for have managed to get to the Dominican Republic and have nice jobs and whatnot. And they've told me as bad as Haiti is, it's very bad in the Dominican Republic because prostitution is legal. However, in order to be a prostitute, you have to be 18, age of consent. And so, you have brothers prostituting their sisters and so forth because the family needs money. So poverty is what drives all this. But one thing I want to point out is a lot of these orphans are not actually orphans. They have at least one parent. But the parent is having trouble being themselves, which is hard to believe because you have these large NGOs like Feed the Poor that have these warehouses full of food. And if you're on the team and in the club, stuff seems to be there. But if you're not, you live in scarcity. And it's just the poverty is just, it's debilitating. And that's where these types of predators set up shop. And I think there's some well-meaning or well-intended, mission groups that think they're making a difference. But, going down to a third world country to paint a wall or paint a building is taking a job away from someone there. Wow. And these mission trips are $3,000 to $5,000. You're not creating any jobs. In fact, you just took one away because you're painting something. Economic development is the way. There's nothing like having a job, a family, keeping the family is the best place for a child to be raised, period. No institution, a family. And the fact is, if we spent all this billions of dollars on economic development rather than NGOs and ambulance chasers and all this, we would have families staying together. I mean, it's a breakdown in the family. What we're seeing in Haiti, we're basically seeing here as well, breakdown in the family. And before you know it, everything goes, multiple fathers and, one mother has multiple fathers of her children and none of them live with the child. And, society tries to step in. I think every child is precious. So I don't distinguish, what country you're from or whatever. I think it's a miracle to even be born. And I can't imagine like some of these victims that I've spoken with through the years I just have nothing but respect for their character and that they want this to stop. So I think that, we need to, as Americans, we need to be careful where we send our money. Don't forget, now here's a statistic for you. I have been told by various people that when we have an appropriate, I don't know if you've ever had the chance to look at an appropriations bill, but it's like a stack of paper like this, right? 500, 800, 1,000 pages.
My face recollecting that.
Yeah. So you know that we've got, before you know it, 25 million going to orphans in Guatemala, and clean water in Mexico, and 25 million and 10 million here on this appropriations bill. And before you know it, it's a large amount of money in aid that the average American thinks that we're doing something good. I've had people in the know, a lot of them tell me that a large portion of that appropriated money stays inside the Beltway. And I think that's what Trump was talking about when he said clear the swamp. And I think they've become very accustomed to the way that operates. And I think your average American doesn't understand, right? They blame the Haitians. So the victim gets double blamed. It's their fault, right? They mismanaged the money. Well, what if the money never showed up? My father was a CPA, he was an auditor, and he was a good auditor. He really got down to business. He could audit something and figure something out. Who's doing the auditing? Is anybody doing the auditing? Because a lot of money's flying around, and I don't know. I think we're kind of getting off topic here, but I think, it holds true to the average American thinks we paid taxes and that it goes to a common good in the world, right?
Yeah.
I would dispute that at this point. I don't have any proof other than, having spoken to many people in my experience, internationally. I think your average person just doesn't understand that. But we're talking large amounts of money. You pick up any appropriations bill. One year I printed it off just to flip through it, and it's not $40 here and $40 there. It's 40 million here and 40 million there. And we have all these groups, 5 million here for attorneys in Haiti, for example, but they have a 0 prosecution rate. So what the $5 million go for if doctors make $300 a month? It's kind of like, and no one sees anything. And like I said, it's like a cat chasing its tail, especially in the poorest country. And the interesting thing about Haiti, if you know its history, Haiti is actually the richest island in the Caribbean. It was the richest colony for France. So all the mahogany that you see in all the castles and estates over there, that came from Haiti. They provided the best coffee, cocoa, all those resources. They were coming out of Haiti for years. They made a lot of money for Europe. And now everything has been decimated.
Mm-hmm.
And people
I've
are
flown
just
over, and when you fly over, you can see the border of Haiti and the Dominican Republic because the trees have been harvested and burned, and that line, for charcoal and whatnot, and it is a clear line of where that border is, and you can see that from 30,000 feet.
Mm-hmm. Well, and they tried to do away with the charcoal business, but the little lady who sells charcoal to make money and food and pay for her kids' school, that's a whole another topic we could talk about is education. Most of it, 90% is private education. A lot of these orphanages allow their premises to be used as for-profit schools. How's that possible if it's nonprofit money that built it? Some of them, they write on their tax forms, they put, helping children in the poorest of the poor in the Caribbean or in Haiti or Dominican Republic or whatnot. So, is the IRS aware of all this? Who's watching our money? Like, how are these appropriations being done? What is Congress doing? They're the purse strings. But the sadness in the trafficking, and now we're seeing it brought to our shores, right? Because that's happening. It's coming over. They're trafficking. The coyotes are bringing them in. And children are with people that are not even their parents. And they don't have paperwork. That's one thing about Haiti is a lot of the birth certificates, because the government is non-functioning for 30, 40, 50, 60 years, maybe ever. Birth certificates are questionable. People are afraid about their identity. But trafficking has been gone, the boat people, you remember the boat people in the 80s, They were trafficking back then.
Now, the trafficking that you kind of referred to, it seems to infer that they're in the sex trade. And what types of, to your knowledge, groups are coming down? You mentioned NAMBLA, you talked about the defrocked clergy members, but are there other organizations that could be confronted here in North America, America specifically, to be called out and to be exposed for their trips down there, for their funding down there, or their even money laundering?
So you know that our Commerce Clause, which I think is Chapter 18, it says you're not supposed to go over the border of the United States to do something that's illicit here in the United States.
Right.
And there, like I mentioned, Doug Perlitz, he was running a place with Fairfield University out of Connecticut. And they just settled that case, I think, with Monsignor Carrier, with the Order of Malta. I think it was $60 million. Matthew Andrew Carter was another Catholic charity. Not sure what order he was involved with, but he's in jail for 135 years. So egregious crimes that they have been able to prosecute. They prosecute usually out of Florida, South Florida, because that's the port of entry. But, you know, these take a lot of money to prosecute, and it's very hard because there's so much money, you know, small time advocates that have no funding are up against a big machine, right? And a lot of people have a lot of face to lose if they, you know, are outed or whatever. So it's just a sad state of affairs that we have grown into accepting this, right? Like I mentioned, imagine trusting someone that has maybe been in your house as a minor for a week, a woman, and maybe a mother, and that you trust them enough to tell them, hey, look, this and that and the other thing's happening in this house. To have enough nerve to say that, and then to be turned away, and then to sit and tell me, look, once I told 12 people, I thought I'm never going to bring this up again because no one will believe me and no one will trust me. And they turn against the victim. We showed more respect to like Bill Cosby's victims and some other, what's the one with the Kavanaugh, the gal out of California that came out of nowhere that said in high school he was mean to her or something. I mean, we showed so much restraint and respect to that woman. And I think of how some of these victims that step forward, the perpetrators paint them, they malign them. They're all bad. They're liars. They're cheaters. They're stealers. When we brought this up to our pastor of our church here in Swanee, we were told, well, don't you know? Everyone knows all Haitians are liars and cheaters and stealers. And we're like, wait, hold it. Last week it was, brother, we got your back and we're praying for you. Right. And now this week, because the jig's sort of getting up, maybe it's getting away, right? All of a sudden they're liars and cheaters and stealers. Like, I'm kind of confused. And anyways, as Christians, isn't that hypocritical? Like, aren't we trained that if someone needs help and someone comes to your door, you're supposed to open it up and try to help them, right?
Yeah, it seems counterintuitive for the core purpose. And I laugh because of the absurdity of it, that they don't deny that it's happening. They're just saying that, oh, well, I guess they might be denying it. But the issue that I have is when they want to, the cost of denying it is perpetuating the conduct. And I think that what you're doing is fantastic. Advocacy, getting out and calling people's attention to these things is the only solution that I could think of while we've been speaking, and getting people to understand what's really going on in Haiti. Now, we also have an issue with human trafficking. You touched on that to begin with in the United States, here in, you said Sewanee, Georgia, and in the Atlanta area. Are there a large number of Haitians that are coming from that environment to here that are being denied possibly asylum when they actually are refugees of that type of misconduct? Or, and I guess a follow-up question to that would be, what happens to these victims when they are no longer children? What becomes of them? Are they cast into the streets? Or I have no idea. I don't want to speculate. So I'd like you to respond to those couple of questions.
So trafficking is there's different types of trafficking. There's sex trafficking, there's organ trafficking, and there's labor trafficking. Okay. And these orphanages really have all three of those components to them, sadly. So the sex trafficking is, imagine, like I said, the example of having NAMBLA stay at an orphanage. Like, you're not going to have NAMBLA stay at your house if you have children, are you? Because I'm not.
Or no, I won't have them
No,
say anyway.
that'd be like a hard no, wouldn't it? It'd be kind of like, and then imagine you had a and this is what I said from the beginning. If something is not right here at 123 Main Street in Swanee, why do we as Americans say it's okay at 123 Main Street in whatever city in whatever country, but we're talking specifically about Haiti. Why are we saying that's okay? Like, that's one thing that I, from the beginning with this pastor in particular, came to my home, and, this is someone that I thought I respected, right? His whole handling of it was not respectable.
Do you think it's because they have this sense of respecting it as a cultural trait, that is just part of that? Because I deal with very high conflict cases in my litigation practice. And there are sometimes callous people, or people become desensitized out of a sense of, I don't want to be seen criticizing any other group for anything that they could tie to a cultural trait. Not that I think any national origin should, or country or ethnicity should be tied to slavery or sex slave or human trafficking. It sounds as though that there's a concession, a comfort level between, there's an ocean between us, there's a body of water between us, and they don't have to make that hard decision.
So the Hague Convention in the UN has a lot of criteria that need to be met, specifically about children. And this is all very well known. And I guess my problem with that is, it's all well and good, and they're meeting together, and at least it's a dialogue and it's a stage and a this, that, the other thing. But my problem is when there's nothing that's executed. Everybody knows this is happening in Haiti and nothing's happening. They know that the organ trafficking is happening in the Dominican Republic. I mean, people are getting their corneas cut out and they're finding them. Other gruesome things. I want to talk about organ trafficking. So there was an orphanage up in Vermont, and I'm going to name it. Okay. And it was in February of 2020. There was a huge fire in Vermont, Haiti, at an orphanage. It was called the Church of Bible Understanding. Their tax returns had it at $6 million in 2017. I believe they had, last count, they had 5 airplanes. Not sure if they still do, but at any point they had airplanes to bring canned goods into Haiti. A little bit suspect, but anyway, they found those children. They had the fire. They believe the fire was sort of a cover up. The children were pulled out of there was only a couple of them that perished like charcoal, but that seemed to be like an accelerant. They were brought to the local Baptist mission, and they needed oxygen, and there was no oxygen at the Baptist mission, even though the Baptist mission has been collecting money, multi-millions of dollars on their budgets for years, 40 years probably. And there was no oxygen. I've shown trafficking experts those photos of those children on gurneys, white sheets, no black soot on their face, nothing. And I'm told that those children were actually under the influence of puffer fish. Puffer fish is kind of like the zombie drug. And then you have to understand, the United States is 2-3 hours away. It's an easy airplane flight and we're one of the largest countries for organ transplanting, and there's a lot of money in it, So it's only naturally with what's driven that also is poverty. So, if you can sell this child that maybe is a bother and they don't have money for food or whatever, you can sell something like that. but the Church of Bible Understanding, they were in their 2017 tax return showed $6 million, which if it's 6 million, it's probably more. They were not licensed. Their license was taken away in 2012. So their license is taken away, but yet they're raising $6 million plus. And
Yeah, I think that's a little fishy.
yeah, I think there's a little that doesn't pass the smell test, does it? You know? So, you know, rather than, and I hats off to some really good patriots down in Haiti that brought the case to the court. The person responsible, rather than face the court, all of a sudden had to leave the country. And so everybody was pointing at everybody. Oh, so-and-so's responsible, so-and-so's responsible, so-and-so's responsible. So today, 2.5 years later, we don't really have any justice on that. Cause d'Ache out of Canada was the company, was the nonprofit group of lawyers. I think it was Canadian Attorneys Without Borders or something or other. And they're the ones who, you know, we wanted to have them all autopsied. But then the orphanage people paid for funerals, you know, each one got $1,500 or something or other. So essentially the parents settled, and, you know, I thought they were orphans. Well, that's right. They're part of the abandoned children, you know, so the conditions were horrendous at that orphanage, and that's why it didn't get licensed. But there were 200 children there, supposedly.
Now, when you mentioned organ harvesting, they're using the orphanages for what scope of organs, and where do you believe these organs are being transferred to the United States or to other developing or developed nations?
So all types of organs: kidneys, lungs, heart valves, cartilage. You'd be surprised at how much body parts and how valuable they are. But as I said, you know, they've got a lot of private landing strips in Haiti, and very easy to get those organs very quickly to hospitals in Florida, for example, you know, for anxiously awaiting people who need those donations. They need those kidneys and so forth. And it's not cheap. If you look at, you know, the hundreds of dollars. Now, United States is a big consumer of organs. Israel, China. China is known to use organs of prisoners, you know, because of lack of respect for life. So, I mean, these children just have it against them. The odds are stacked against them. That's why I think they're all miracles if they survive, you know, through the years. But you asked me about what happens to them after they age out. So most students in Haiti do not graduate on time. So they don't graduate at 18. They're some of them could be 22 to 25 and still in high school, believe it or not. And high school is actually, they get it's a French system, and they graduate with something like it's an international baccalaureate. So it's kind of like, it should be like a 2-year degree. You take a final exam, like an SAT, and it's very hard. And so a lot of people fail it. And when you fail it, you have to go back and, you know, redo, and it takes a lot of time. So a lot of these orphanages, they're getting out of high school. The one orphanage that it comes to mind, a lot of the directors, one of them has a 4th grade education, but because he's done what the director wanted, he finds himself in a very profitable position. Security guards and so forth. You can imagine just let your imagination go wild as to what you would need to do to get on someone's good graces. And if you were previously groomed or programmed, you can only imagine as an adult what's going on. So again, you know, very well established and well known as to what's going on. The problem is there's just no really place to report it. Bien-être social is a social services in Haiti. It's run by a lady, Madame Villadouin. I think she was Miss Universe at one time. She's a lovely lady, and she's done her level best to try to make some difference. But I met with her. She said that, Valerie, the problem is, if we close one down at 123 Main Street, they just go around the corner and they open it up under a different name. And they have that money. And she says, I don't have the money for my operation, and she does the best that she can do, but don't forget, we're up against some bad guys. One orphanage had the assistant director's gun, had a gun that was unlicensed, and it was used in the commission of a crime in another city where the gun was used to shoot and kill 2 police officers. Believe it or not, he still has the title of assistant director. Another, in that same house, the director was walking down a main street, one of the main streets, and he pulled a machete on one of the victims that had been testifying about what was going on and what had happened in their younger years. And he pulled a machete on him. I mean, police reports, he was arrested, no prosecution. He's out walking around. And in fact, he's the director of that house. So our nonprofits up here in the United States are supporting all that operation.
Well, I have a question. Are there any candidates or people that are sitting in Congress, House, Senate, state, or federal level that have taken this as a project to hopefully stop this, to educate the people? And are there any people that you're aware of that are on board with your advocacy?
So Rob Woodall, our congressman here in Suwannee, he is a nice, good guy. He was met with him several times. He was very instrumental and very helpful through the years with my advocacy, and always very interested. He's a good family man, and we miss him here in Gwinnett County, I think. So he was very helpful. And Johnny Isaacson, before he died, he called on the U.S. Embassy to be audited, because a lot of things are being approved and sorted out at that U.S. Embassy. So the State Department is aware of all this, right? And so, because we have American bad actors that are going over our,
Right.
so Johnny Isaacson was very helpful. Yes, he's a good family man. He used to be my broker way back in the day. So he was very helpful, and I appreciate his help and support. Outraged, they were just both outraged. Aside from that, I love that Trump tried to raise awareness with this. His daughter was involved and so forth, and that was really great. But for victims to see that there's a big party going on at the White House to commemorate advocacy is a little bit much. If there's only so many dollars, like, what are you doing to help the victim to get education, to get counseling or whatever?
Yeah.
And see, that's what I always have tried to do is, education's everything. Just having someone to listen to you. And these victims, they're needy. They have, they've got abandonment issues that they deal with. You can imagine being institutionalized. So that's part of my advocacy, and I've done the very best I can. I think I have a very good record. I've had several of my the people that I've advocated for have graduated from high school, gone on to college, graduated from college, and that's just little old Valerie in little old Suwannee. So if I can do it, I'm sure there's a lot of people that could do it bigger, better than I could do it. But I'll tell you, the aid and so forth, USAID, goes to the big names inside the Beltway and some of the bigger names. Like I said, the Calico Beach. One thing these traffickers like to do is they like to go on Super Bowl weekends. There was a case in Haiti at the Calico Beach. You can look up, which I think is now owned by the Hiltons, a very nice area. And they rounded up kids off the street and said, hey, you want to go to the spa for a day? Like, who would turn that down, right? I mean, like, no one. And they had some bad actors come to Haiti off the coast there at the Calico Beach. And I know some police officers that were there for that raid. And the Americans and Canadians were allowed to leave. And the only people arrested were the Haitians. And to this day, I mean, I know who it is, but only because I know who was there. But No names are mentioned. No
Well,
one talks about it.
well, I'll tell you that what you're doing, you're probably one of too few people doing it. And I think getting out the word, advocating, doing the good work, it's a breath of fresh air to know that there are people like you, but we need more people like you. How, if
Yes.
someone wanted to volunteer or assist you or donate to your cause, how would they go about doing it?
Well, we have a website. It's www.icras8.com. I used to give my cell phone out, but I'm too busy. I can't be taking all those phone calls, so I don't do that anymore. So best thing to do is to email me at Val cells SELLSATL@gmail.com, and I answer all emails or text messages that I may get. But it's important, share this information. I would love to talk to anybody who wanted to make a difference. We've got a lot of these victims. Sometimes they just need someone to kind of take them under their wing. I had one that just graduated for the first time, super, super proud, with his international baccalaureate, which is just totally a miracle. And I mean, I've told people that are attorneys, and they said, sometimes people take it 3 times. I said, God is good, So, and he's got a lot of aspirations. Every one of the victims that I advocate for, I'm just super, super proud of, and they all, like anybody else, have dreams and aspirations, and I would love to help them, go from victim to survivor. Obviously, it's going to be hard to have peace for any of these people without justice. We're not going to be able to get that unless we get some justice, and there needs to be more prosecution. Our Department of Justice and Homeland Security, I think it's 90% great people. But when I'm seeing some of the stuff local, that I've seen recently, I am in shock that I'm in America, that this is happening. And I'm hopeful that at some point, we're going to band together and say enough is enough. Someone come knocking at your door and needs help, that you don't put your hand on their shoulder and say, hey, be grateful that you woke up this morning, or, whatever. We need to say no, and we all need to be outraged. And I think mothers specifically, it seems like like I said, we're starting to demasculate men for some reason. It's hard for me to believe. My dad was a World War II Marine. I mean, not only no, but hell no, right? I mean, not only no, but hell no. I don't know. Everybody's afraid to say anything. Everybody's afraid of that. And, I'm not afraid of anything. The truth is the truth. God knows that. And I appreciate you even reaching out to me today and trying to find out more about what I do, and trying to get the word out. So really appreciate your efforts today.
Well, Valerie, thank you for coming today. I have appreciated and enjoyed every bit of our conversation, and it's been very eye-opening. If you needed to come back on the show, or as any of these developments come about, I'd like to keep in touch with you to see how things play out. I know you've got always a lot of moving parts here. So
Yes.
I hope that you get the exposure to the issues, and hopefully some contacts and resources coming your way to keep up the good fight. So thank you very much for your time, and we'll be in touch.
Thank you so much. Have a great one.
You too. Thank you very much.
Mhm.